This is Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, The War and Peace Report. I'm Amy Goodman. We're broadcasting from New Orleans Public Television, WLAE, here in Louisiana. We are joined by Henry James, who was exonerated in 2011 after 30 years in Angola prison. Emily Maw is director of the Innocence Project of New Orleans. How did you survive all of those decades in jail? Did you give up hope? You were sentenced to life in prison.
Without benefit, my benefit of parole or probation.
Without parole?
Or probation. I spent the sentence.
And so what happened at the end that ultimately freed you?
What happened at the end ultimately freed me? I just said thank God for DNA. That was freed me. You know, and look, I mean, I carried on a lot on my shoulder in prison because I felt like injustice wasn't served to me, you know. And I'm still feeling today like I'm far short, even though I'm free, you know. I mean, I got 4 children, you know, that never been talked about. You know, I got 4 witnesses that was in court. They just been looked over. Then I was tried by a jury, but it wasn't my parents. Then the fact that officers frame me, I'm gonna say that, because how can, you know, the lady said that the officers report saying they got on the scene 2 minutes after it happened, okay, but I got a problem with the officer saying he transferred the victim from the residence to the hospital, okay, and then the further saying the report that is showing that after they get to the hospital, you understand, the question was raised to one officer, was they able to come up with a suspect? And the one officer, you know, told the trial to say yeah. And they asked them how they was able to come up with a suspect. They said after talking to the witness, they was able to come up with a photograph. In other words, what I'm trying to say is that the victim was transferred from resident to the Hurricane Long Hospital. After they got to Hurricane Long Hospital, one officer gave another officer a photograph of me and transferred it to Jefferson Parish and put in a known sex offender book. I never been charged with a sex offense book. Wouldn't that would be like leading in the witness? Where did the picture come from between a residence and a hospital?
Emily Maw.
I think one of the things that's interesting about Henry's case is this idea that an eyewitness identification is all you need, really. And even if there's physical evidence that contradicts that eyewitness identification, and I think a lot of what Henry's feeling is what a lot of people who get misidentified feel, which is that even if this was an innocent mistake, how did this happen? How did this woman get my picture and identify me when I didn't do it? And
so there was the semen test, and then there was the DNA test.
That's right. Those are 2 different things. So in 1982, when Henry went to trial, there was no such thing as DNA testing. Serology testing, which is blood typing, are you A, B, or O, positive or negative, was the kind of thing that you would do. Right. And with that, you can exclude people. If it's B blood type and the perpetrator has A, then you know that person's excluded, but only in very broad group terms. You can never say, this is the profile of the perpetrator, and that is not Henry James's profile, in the way that with DNA you can. So when DNA was available, even though there was this, you know, what we would consider an exclusion by blood typing, serology testing, even at the time of trial, the much more specific, less disputable DNA exclusion that came along 30 years later, when we were ultimately able to find the semen that the rapist had left 30 years later, they'd kept it. We were able to test it and show conclusively that that eyewitness was mistaken.
So the lab director looked for months.
2 full days, actually, was what happened. 2 full days we spent searching with the DA's office, who fully cooperated and felt that this was an important case to test.
And you looked
And our office and the lab director went through every box of everything they had.
When I say months, what I mean is, so you had the search, but then it was many months?
It was a couple of months. I'm a little, I can't remember exactly, but it was a chunk of time later. And he, you know, the lab director was good enough to remember the case number when he was searching for something else, and immediately called everybody and said, that piece of evidence we looked for 2 days, we found it, and everybody agreed immediately that it should be sent off for testing.
And so, Henry James, you were exonerated. Now, Louisiana is one of, some 24 states that gives money for those who have been exonerated, held in prison, wrongly accused. You, for 30 years, But there's a cap, and what is it, $25,000 every year for each year until 10 years, and there's a cap on it at 10 years. So you get $250,000. Do you get it all at once?
Right.
All at once
Right.
they give it to you? Or they give it to you?
No, they give me yearly.
Yearly. So 25 a year.
Yeah. And I done did 30 years.
You should be getting, just by this,
Right.
750,000. But Louisiana capped it. Can you sue?
I wish I could. I wish I could. But see, I'm not legally inclined, and I have the people that I've been talking from here, and I have no one that to come to me to try to, you know, pursue that issue.
In most wrongful conviction cases, there is not a civil suit that can be brought. The insulation from liability in those cases, they're generally called 1983 cases, is so high, people are so insulated from suit, and what you have to prove is not what usually happens. That almost nobody, a very, very small proportion of people who are wrongly convicted recover in a civil suit.
Can you describe, Henry James, what Angola was like? It's often referred to as a plantation prison. What did you do every day?
What did I do every day?
Did you go?
I worked in the field.
In the fields of the prison?
Fields, right,
doing
for
what?
4 cents. The land, like a slavery type of stuff. Cropping the fields. I done pick cotton.
You were picking cotton?
I done pick cotton. I done pick cotton, pull cotton, burn cotton. We done chop, we call it chop ditches. Done chop the levee. We done pick tomatoes, okra. I done pick cabbage, greens. Pull and plant potatoes. I mean, I literally did this type of stuff in the wintertime until my hand was cold. My hands could literally move. But either I had to stay out there in that cold, you understand, or go to the dungeon.
The dungeon?
Yeah.
What's the dungeon?
In other words, that if you don't cooperate with authority, then go along with doing the field work, they will lock you up.
In solitary confinement?
Right. And
what's the dungeon like? Had you ever been there?
Yeah, I've been there. It's like it's confinement. You stay there for about, I mean, you stay there for whatever violation you're in until you go to court. And when you stay in there, it's more like they don't really clean up like they're supposed to in there. You stay in there for a length of time, you will go to court. When you go to court, whatever report being wrote against you, then you're subject to get 10 days there. Lost store privilege, visiting to.
Were you injured while you were working the fields, picking cotton, other crops?
Was I injured? If you take sick out there, I'm gonna say, if you take sick out there, they will send what they call a sick call truck to come see you. And when they come see you, you know, they will probably, you got to pay for that. And you got to pay for them coming out there and see you. You also got to pay for any type of medicated treatment they give.
Were you injured at all in prison?
Yes.
What happened?
I got a dislocated shoulder where I fell in the band room, which was a classroom in school, literature school. And I stayed in the dungeon. After I fell, they locked me up because they tried to make it look like something it wasn't, fight. And what happened was I went to the dungeon, and I stayed back. They put me in the cell, be 13 or 14, for 30 days, you know. I stayed back there, and I tried to get sick call. And sick call, them people will come out, and they will come with an attitude towards you. And they will leave your cell, you know, just saying for any excuse. Well, I guess they give their authority, but they give their authorities, that was just going to be. But anyway, they didn't want to hear my complaint. And I stayed there for 30 days, nearly 30 days, suffer. And I didn't know that I had a dislocated shoulder until I got out. But when you're able to get out the dungeon, you're able to move around a little bit more. Then you're able to make phone calls. You know, so when I got out, I made some phone calls to some friends on the outside, people. And they were called up there and complained about. And that about me complaining about my shoulder. And that's how I got some medical help from Earl K. Long.
You learned to read and write in prison?
Yes.
How did that change you?
It changed me from being a better person because I was ignorant, you know, and I was ignorant to a lot of things that was going on, what I was into. And by me going there in prison and practically educate myself and learning from other guys' experience, and other guys that done been there and experienced the same experience I experienced. You see, I had a chance to go to the law library, read some things, and that I didn't understand. I had people there, you know, to help me to understand.
So you had 4 children.
Yes, ma'am.
You came out of prison 30 years later.
4 children I left, there was babies.
What was that like?
It's right now because it affected, my absence affected my family. You know, and I'm still trying right now, you know, to work with some things.
They're in their 30s now.
That's right. And it was babies when I left. It affected it, you know, and...
How do you repair that family relationship?
I guess with kind treatment, you know, and, you know, I tried to repair her and just try to be there for them the best that I could, and just continually try to show them love and try to support them the best way I could.
Emily Maw, how typical is Henry James' case? 30 years in prison. He was sentenced to life without parole until you found this slide, the DNA test that freed him.
Henry James's case is unfortunately atypical. Everybody in Louisiana who is convicted of murder or rape gets sentenced to life without parole. There is no other sentence for those 2 crimes. What is atypical about Henry's case is that they found the evidence. In Louisiana, as in many places, evidence storage and preservation practices are atrocious. People lose evidence all the time in cases where DNA testing could prove their innocence. And so while we have managed to free people with DNA testing in our office, the vast majority of people whose guilt could be confirmed or whose innocence could be proven by DNA testing will never get the opportunity to do that because the state authorities have simply lost the evidence, because nobody invests in practices that promote orderly evidence storage, and evidence storage that means that 30 years later you can find a slide. So tragically, his case is atypical.
His case, the slide was found by accident.
Yeah.
The search had already been done and it wasn't found.
That's right.
And then working on a totally different case, the lab director finds the slide.
Looking in a different area. Yes, that's right. Yeah. And so obviously, you know, most people, their story ends when nobody finds the slide, you know, as happened originally in Henry's case. But by the grace of God and by some, you know, good work by the crime lab director in looking out for it.
And by Henry James, how did you find the Innocence Project? I mean, you were in jail forever then.
I found them through, I believe through newspaper ad or see they got thing they call we get magazines. In other words, that, you know, that get certain things, give legal works an address, you know, different organizations on the outside. And this is how that a friend of mine came to me, you know, gave me the address and told me I should write these people.
From your injury that has made it difficult for you to work getting out of prison, you went to the Social Security office?
Yes.
And what happened?
They rewarded me. They found that, you know, I wasn't, you know, I'm disabled and some other issues. And they rewarded me from the time I applied until the time that was, they rewarded me from the time I applied until about, you know, they rewarded me from the first time I applied until early last year. They awarded me something like, you know, over 1,000. You didn't know about that?
I didn't know.
Yeah, they did. And what happened was that the Social Security office, they took it to another level. And they wanted to know a lot of things. They're saying that I wouldn't, they indirectly saying I wasn't eligible because I've been wanted by the state.
Because you were getting money from the state, you weren't eligible for Social Security. Because the state was
not eligible because the jury ruled in my favor. So what they were saying is so many words that because the kind of reward I got from the state, that's why that wouldn't make me qualify, you know.
So the reparations you got from the state would disqualify you for getting the
for right now.
aid for being disabled and not being able to work.
Right.
So you can choose to be compensated for the fact of your wrongful imprisonment or the fact of the injury you sustained, but you can't have both.
Right. I got some more paperwork on that.
How does it feel to be able to just walk out of the studio at the end of this interview?
And it feels wonderful. It feels wonderful. All I can say, I just thank God, you know, that, you know, He brought me through it, you know, because, you know, they had a lot of wrong turns I could have turned. And then the thing about it, in my work, I try to be an example for others, you know. I took my experience, what I was experiencing, I shared with other people to try to give them some hope, you know, in that spot. Because, you know, in Angola, they don't have many guys like me that talk about, everybody that know me, the cat in the head talk about going home, you know. And I feel like going home, you know, what's the thing? Because we can sit there how much, we can sit there and we can tell each other all type of stories about what we want to do, what we like to do. But if you don't work toward it, you know, and try to get with somebody on the outside that can help us, you understand, we just going to sit there, grow old and die. And, you know, and I was trying to tell guys this, not sure, everything that the thing that was happening to me, I share with other guys. I work in the kitchen, anyway, by the fact.
Well, Henry James, I want to thank you very much for spending time with us today. And also Emily Ma. Emily Ma is director of the Innocence Project of New Orleans. Henry James was exonerated in 2011 after 30 years at Angola prison. This is Democracy Now! When we come back, we're going to hear about the case of another man. He's one of the Angola Three. His name is Herman Wallace. He's dying in prison right now, any day now, of liver cancer. He was in solitary confinement for 42 years. This is Democracy Now! Stay with us. We're broadcasting from Louisiana.